A frantic 911 call about a suspicious black couple in a luxury Tesla. Within minutes, 4 patrol cars swarmed them, sirens blaring. Inside, an elite FBI agent and a DOJ prosecutor exchanged a knowing glance. This wasn't a stop. It was a reckoning. The 911 call was a masterpiece of manufactured panic. It dripped with the venom of unease that wealthy, homogeneous neighborhoods mistake for vigilance. There in a black Tesla, a Model X, the voice of Karen Miller trembled, each word polished with privilege. They don't look like they belong here. They're circling the house for sale on the corner. I think they're casing it. She was calling from the estates at Silver Creek, a place where cookie-cutter mansions competed in tasteful beige and flawless emerald lawns were a religion. The dispatcher, trained to de-escalate, began her script. "Can you describe them, ma'am?" But it was too late. The algorithm of bias had already been triggered. Before she could finish her question, 4 patrol cars were already tearing through the manicured silence of Silver Creek, their sirens slicing through the quiet hum of sprinkler systems and 6-figure landscaping contracts. The alert that crackled over their radios wasn't a query, it was a verdict. Possible 459 in progress. Suspects, 1 black male, 1 black female. Dark-colored luxury SUV. Inside that SUV, Dr. Maya Jackson didn't flinch. The red and blue strobes painted frantic, violent patterns across the car's interior, but her hands were steady. With the calm of a surgeon closing an incision, she shut down the encrypted, biometrically locked tablet on her lap, a device containing classified FBI behavioral analysis files that would make a lesser person's blood run cold. She placed it face down on the polished console. Beside her, Ben Carter, a senior prosecutor for the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, looked up from his own notes. He wore a worn, unassuming gray hoodie with "Georgetown Law" faded on the chest. He let out a long, slow exhale, the same one he'd used before dismantling a corrupt police department's defense in federal court. "Here we go again," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "Stay cool. They're profiling, not arresting. Yet." Neither of them reached for their wallets. They knew the unwritten rules. In moments like this, your credentials were a liability until they could be a weapon. Your skin color was the only ID the world saw first. The megaphone outside blared, a distorted, aggressive voice shouting, "Driver, hands out the window. Step out of the vehicle slowly." Maya opened her door, her movements deliberate and clear. Her hands were immediately visible, palms open. "On your knees." "Now," a young officer screamed. His voice cracked on the last word, the sound of a man performing a role he wasn't yet comfortable with, especially in the face of such unnerving composure. Maya followed his instructions not with submission, but with the chilling precision of a drill. She knelt on the cold asphalt, her expensive blazer now gathering dust, her posture perfect. It was an act of compliance so disciplined it felt like a challenge. As she knelt, Ben, still in the passenger seat with his hands on the dashboard, subtly pressed a discreet button, flush with the paneling beneath the steering wheel. There was no sound, no light. But hundreds of miles away, an encrypted, real-time data stream from the Tesla's 360-degree cameras and internal microphones began feeding directly to the Department of Justice's internal accountability server. The system wasn't just recording. It was bearing witness. The lead officer, a man with a thick neck and an aura of belligerent certainty, stepped forward. His name tag read, Sergeant Davis. He was a man whose authority was worn like a shield, and he clearly enjoyed the weight of it. He swaggered toward the Tesla's hood, rapping his knuckles on the glossy black paint. "This vehicle matches the description of one used in a string of high-end burglaries last week," Davis announced, his voice loud enough for his subordinates to hear the confidence. It was a lie, a fabrication spun from thin air to justify the overwhelming show of force, but it served its purpose. It established a narrative of guilt. He pointed a thumb at Ben. "You. Proof of ownership. Now." Ben didn't move his hands from the dash. His voice, when it came, was unnervingly level. "Officer, we're on federal business. We are not authorized to disclose details of our work to local law enforcement." A smirk crawled across Sergeant Davis's face. He laughed, a short, sharp bark of derision. "Federal business? You watch too many movies, pal. What are you, Secret Service?" He leaned closer, his eyes scanning the interior of the expensive car. Another officer, younger and bolder now that his sergeant had set the tone, chimed in. "This car isn't cheap," he said, looking at Ben's hoodie with open contempt. "Where'd you get the money for it?" The question hung in the air, thick with unspoken accusations. It wasn't about the car, it was about the man sitting in it. On the ground, Maya remained a statue of composure. Her mind, however, was a whirlwind of tactical analysis. Her silence wasn't fear. It was a crucible. She was an FBI behavioral analyst. She knew that in a confrontation, the person who spoke first often lost control. Let them talk. Let them build their case against themselves. Every biased question, every baseless accusation was another brick in the wall of evidence she was mentally constructing. Let the rot expose itself, she thought. You don't cure a disease by hiding the symptoms. Her calculation paid off. Emboldened by their silence, Officer Miller, the one with the cracking voice, began walking toward the rear of the Tesla. "Gonna check the trunk," he mumbled to his partner, as if seeking validation. "Could be full of stolen goods." He was about to commit an illegal search. That was when Ben spoke again, his voice cutting through the tension with the precision of a scalpel. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. He spoke clearly, for the benefit of the unseen microphone. "Officer, that's a Fourth Amendment violation, and I want to note for the record that you are proceeding without probable cause and without consent. Your actions are being documented." Sergeant Davis froze for a half-second. He glanced at Ben, a flicker of something, annoyance, uncertainty, crossing his face. Then, he let out another derisive snort. He gave Miller a sharp nod. "Go ahead, son. Check it. Let's see what our federal agents are hiding." He had made his choice. The system was now recording his willful defiance of the law he had sworn to uphold. As Officer Miller fumbled with the Tesla's flush door handle, Ben's gaze remained fixed forward, but his mind was miles, and decades, away. He saw his father, a brilliant architect, being pulled from his own car in 1987. Beaten, humiliated, ribs broken, all because he fit the description. His father's ghost whispered a warning Ben had carried his entire life: you cannot fight their fire with your own. You must use water. You must use ice. He wasn't just a man in a hoodie being profiled, he was the son of a survivor, now armed with the full weight of the United States Department of Justice. This wasn't a street-side humiliation. It was a prosecutor's brief being written in real time. The officers, oblivious, grew more relaxed, their banter a toxic mix of arrogance and ignorance. "I swear I've seen this guy somewhere before," one of them said, squinting at Ben. "Probably one of those Instagram lawyers flexing his rental for the weekend," another replied with a laugh. The comment, casual and cruel, was captured in perfect clarity by the DOJ server. Meanwhile, in a sterile, dimly lit room in Washington, D.C., a different kind of drama was unfolding. An analyst at the DOJ's command center, a young woman named Sarah, stared at her screen. A high-priority alert was flashing, a crimson banner across her monitor. Flag, Tier 1 Agent, Carter, Benjamin A., DOJ Civil Rights, Non-Standard Enforcement Contact, active. Her heart hammered. A Tier 1 flag meant a senior federal officer was in potential jeopardy. She clicked, and the live feed from Ben's Tesla filled her screen. She saw the 4 patrol cars, the officer kneeling on the pavement, the illegal search in progress. A second flag popped up as the system cross-referenced the vehicle's registration. Flag, Associated Passenger, Dr. Jackson, Maya L., FBAU, active. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. She hit the red button on her console. "Director's office, now. We have a code blue. I repeat, a code blue on 2 of our own." Up the chain of command, a quiet, controlled panic erupted. Phone calls were made. Protocols were activated. The Deputy Attorney General was on the line within 90 seconds. But back on the quiet, tree-lined street in Silver Creek, Sergeant Davis and his team were still living in their bubble of blissful ignorance. They were the apex predators of this suburban jungle, completely unaware that they were being watched by the dragons. The turning point arrived not with a siren, but in silence. A sleek, unmarked black Chevrolet Suburban, the kind that blends in everywhere and belongs nowhere, turned onto the street. It didn't roll, it materialized, its tinted windows absorbing the frantic police lights and reflecting nothing. It pulled to a stop about 50 feet away, its engine a barely audible hum. The arrival was so sudden, so out of place, that it instantly broke the spell. Every officer on the scene felt a primal shift in the atmosphere. The game had just changed, and they didn't even know the new rules. The doors of the Suburban opened with a solid, definitive thud. 2 men in impeccably tailored dark suits emerged. They didn't hurry. They moved with the unshakable calm of men who never had to ask for permission. The lead agent, a tall man with sharp eyes and graying temples, was Supervisory Special Agent Quinn of the FBI's D.C. field office. As Quinn started walking toward the scene, Sergeant Davis's face went through a rapid series of transformations. First, confusion. Then, a dawning, horrified recognition. He had met Agent Quinn once, 2 years ago, at a tense multi-agency briefing where Quinn had silently dismantled the local PD's entire investigation with a few quiet questions. He was a legend, and a terrifying one at that. Quinn didn't raise his voice. He didn't flash a badge. He walked directly to Sergeant Davis, whose bravado had evaporated, replaced by a cold sweat. Quinn leaned in, his voice a low, confidential murmur that didn't carry more than a foot. The other officers couldn't hear what he said, but they saw the effect. The color drained from Sergeant Davis's face as if a plug had been pulled. His jaw went slack. He looked from Quinn's iron gaze to the kneeling figure of Maya Jackson, and then to the man in the hoodie in the Tesla, and a sickening, catastrophic understanding crashed down on him. "All units, stand down." Davis choked into his radio, his voice a strangled whisper. "Disengage. I repeat, disengage now. Fall back to the perimeter. This is a misunderstanding." The order sent a ripple of chaos through his officers. The barking orders choked into static. The aggressive postures dissolved into a frantic, clumsy retreat. They fumbled with their equipment, their eyes darting between their terrified sergeant and the 2 silent, suit-clad figures who now commanded the scene. One of the federal agents helped Maya to her feet. She brushed the dirt from her blazer with a single, sharp gesture, her expression unreadable but her eyes burning with cold fire. Sergeant Davis, desperate to salvage the situation, stumbled forward. "Sir, ma'am, we had some confusion regarding your vehicle." Ben finally moved. He didn't get out of the car. He simply turned his head, and his calm gaze pinned Davis to the spot. He interrupted the sergeant's stammering apology, his voice carrying the full weight of the law he represented. "You didn't check the plate," Ben said, his words precise and devastating. "You didn't ask for ID. You saw a black couple in an expensive car in a nice neighborhood, and you made an assumption. Your actions tonight were not based on reason. They were based on race." Sergeant Davis opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The truth of Ben's statement was absolute, leaving no room for excuses. He had cornered 2 of the most powerful investigators in the country, and he had done it for the oldest, ugliest reason in the book. Back in their quiet, minimalist apartment in Washington, D.C., the air was thick with the silent hum of justice in motion. There was no shouting, no triumphant celebration. There was only work. With the surgical precision of a prosecutor building an airtight case, Ben uploaded the complete, unedited, multi-angle footage from the Tesla to the DOJ's internal misconduct database. He tagged it, Priority Review, Potential Civil Rights Violation by Law Enforcement. Involved parties, DOJ, FBI. Simultaneously, Maya filed her own report with the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility. Her language was devoid of emotion, a clinical, factual documentation of events, from the initial stop to Sergeant Davis's final, stammering retreat. It wasn't a complaint, it was an indictment, written not with anger, but with the cold, irrefutable weight of documentation. The system they both served began to churn. Within 48 hours, the chief of police in Silver Creek's district received a formal inquiry from the DOJ's Federal Oversight Division. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. All body cam footage was to be surrendered. All dispatch audio was to be subpoenaed. The 4 officers involved, along with Sergeant Davis, were placed on administrative leave pending a full internal and federal investigation. A week later, Ben was asked to be the keynote speaker at a closed-door Justice Department Ethics Summit. Standing before a room of the nation's top prosecutors and federal agents, he didn't mention names or locations. He didn't have to. He spoke about silence. He spoke about the assumptions that hide in protocols and the prejudice that whispers in procedure. He told the story of a traffic stop, reframing it as a field test for the very soul of their profession. He ended his speech with words that would soon echo far beyond that room. For years, my job has been to build and enforce systems of accountability from the top down, he said, his voice steady. But last week, accountability met me on the street. It looked me in the eye. And I let it see everything. A recording of that speech, intended for internal training, was leaked. Within hours, it went viral. The raw footage from the Tesla, leaked from a different source, followed. The combination was explosive. The video needed no dramatic music or narration. The silent, high-definition footage of a calm, professional black woman being forced to her knees while officers mocked her partner was more powerful than any documentary. The comments section became a national town hall. Lawyers, doctors, students, and even former police officers flooded the feed. "This happened to my father," one wrote. "They just didn't have a camera." Another, an active-duty detective from Chicago, commented, "I've spent 20 years on the force. I never believed it was this blatant. I was wrong. Thank you for not being silent." The incident transcended personal humiliation and became a structural catalyst. The footage forced a conversation that was impossible to ignore. In response to the public outcry and internal pressure, the police departments in 3 states announced a mandatory, top-to-bottom review of their stop-and-frisk and profiling protocols, with the DOJ overseeing the process. A month later, Ben and Maya drove through the estates at Silver Creek again. This time, they were in a simple, unassuming sedan. The house that had sparked the 911 call now had a bright red, "Sold" sign on its perfect lawn. The neighborhood looked exactly the same, but the air felt different. The silence no longer felt like a threat. It felt watched. As they waited at a red light, a young Latino boy on a bicycle, maybe 10 or 11, coasted up beside their car. He squinted, his eyes wide with recognition. "Hey," he said, a little breathless. Are you the people from that video?" Maya turned, a small, weary smile touching her lips. Before she could answer, Ben leaned across the passenger seat. "We're the people who don't let fear shut us up," he said gently. The boy nodded slowly, processing a concept far older than himself. He looked from Ben to Maya, his expression serious. "They were wrong," he said quietly, with the unshakable conviction of a child. "You didn't do anything wrong." Maya's smile widened, this time filled with a genuine warmth. "You're right, kid," she said. "And that's why we had to show the world." The light turned green, and they drove on. The incident wasn't an end. It was a beginning. The real change wasn't in the headlines or the pending disciplinary actions against Sergeant Davis. It was in the microscopic hesitation that would now precede action. It was in the mind of a police chief reviewing training manuals, in the gut of a rookie cop on a late-night patrol, and in the heart of a young boy on a bicycle who had seen for himself that authority could be wrong. The greatest impact of that night wasn't the noise it created, but the pause it instilled. A pause long enough for a single, crucial question to surface: what if we're wrong this time? And in that pause, justice finds its voice. What do you think is the most powerful way to create change? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that matters. Remember to comment with respect for everyone's experiences.